Afternoon, everyone. I'm Helen Bowman, Customer Service Director for Gamma Enterprise and Public Sector Customers, for those of you I don't already know. I'm going to be talking to you today, not just me, a couple of special guests coming on with me, about all things customer experience. And I say all things because I think there's a tendency to put customer experience in the technology box a lot of the time. We heard this morning from our CIO panel that technology can't stay in a box anymore. It's woven through everything. We've just heard Richard and Amy say security can't stay in a box anymore. It's woven through everything. And I think we're coming to that point where all of our traditional stovepipe teams need to converge together, and customer experience is no different. So for me, I want to look at the whole customer experience and where service excellence fits into that, and what actually that means to provide service excellence to our customers, and what our customers are actually telling us that that means and what they want. So I'm going to invite in a minute our special guests on stage, and we're going to be talking to the Institute of Customer Service about some of the research that they do routinely, and also some of the special research projects that they do. So they've done a research paper recently on the importance of trust, building trust with your customers, but also building trust with your partners, with your supplier community, with your shareholders, and with your staff, very importantly, and how maintaining, building, fostering customer trust is the key to customer loyalty and retention, and actually winning new business as well. We're also going to look at a report that they did called the Customer Service Dividend, so the return on investment of customer service. So that increased trust links to increased customer satisfaction, which leads to increased productivity, which leads to increased business performance. It's not rocket science. I think we probably kind of all knew that, but the evidence is there now so that you can demonstrate that to the board. And that will see the voice of the customer becoming more prominent in the boardroom to help drive those initiatives. And that's what the Institute does. So for anybody that isn't familiar with their work, and I think we've got some members of the Institute of Customer Service in the room today, but for anyone that isn't familiar with it, they go out twice a year to a broad pool of consumers across the United Kingdom, and they do their UK CSI. So it's the Customer Satisfaction Index, and they ask the same questions and they benchmark where we are, how we're doing as a service nation in UK organisations across 13 industry sectors. And from that report, they pull out how we're doing in CSAT, in NPS, and in customer effort scoring over a period of time. But more importantly, they pull out the salient points. What are my customers actually saying that is important to them? And what are the main recommendations that we, all of us in the room, as UK organisations that provide services to customers, can do to supercharge our customer service offering going forwards? And it wouldn't be GX if we didn't at some stage talk about AI and automation again. So we were going to delve into that. It comes up in the UK CSI. We've just heard about cybersecurity remaining a threat, something that's clear and present in people's mind. How has that impacted customer sentiment and their appetite to go on an automated customer journey and supplement that in favour of the old school email, phone call contacts? So we'll be looking at that. And we're also going to be hearing from some of the work that Gamma has done to help customers on their automation journeys already. So without further ado, I'll invite onto the stage Customer Success Manager and Smart Agent expert Harriet Carr and CEO of the Institute of Customer Service, Causon.
Hello.
It's a good stage, Helen. Thank you. I think, Helen, you already work for us. Sounds fabulous. I'll have to definitely get you to come and join more permanently. Definitely.
So, Joe, I will start with you, if I may. I'll give you your clicker. So, UK CSI happens twice a year.
It does.
You go out to all the consumers in the UK, not all of them, but lots of consumers in the UK, and you ask them their thoughts on lots of different organisations. You split that into industries, and you give us loads of great feedback off the back of that. The last one was published in January this year.
It was. Mm-hmm.
Can you give us a flavour for what the main themes are in that? What are you seeing? What's the state of the nation?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you for inviting me here today. And it is great to know that there are a number of members in the audience as well. Do you want me, Helen, just to sort of kind of do a bit of scene setting as to behind that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the UK CSI? Because you're right, it is a tool It's about 60,000 respondents, so it's quite a sizable survey that we do, and we split it across 13 different industry sectors. But what I thought I would do is just try and do a little bit of scene setting, first of all, about, I think, the environment that we are all operating. And I only caught the end of the last session. But I thought it was really important because there's some key things coming up around integration, making sure that we're talking in the language of the business, and customer experience and customer service is no different to that, as you will testify. But there are a few things up here that I think is, in my time as a CEO, I don't think I've ever known a time when there is quite so much going on. So if you're having to navigate this environment, I think it's pretty tough at the moment. So from key things that we're seeing, societal polarisation. So our customers are quite divided. So we're definitely seeing that. We've got very diverse needs. Our ability to be able to respond to that, you can see that coming out again in the UK CSI. You mentioned trust. Trust is a really big issue. We've had in the last 12 months a number of very high-profile organisations that have clearly lost trust. And also, it's not okay to be brilliant as an organisation on your own. The sector stuff is really important because what's happening to us as consumers is we're kind of doubting everyone. So if we have a bad experience here, we tend to, the halo effect, rather than being positive, starts to be negative across the piece. So we have to work much harder to regain trust. So that's a key thing that I would pull out here. Clearly, fragile economic growth, which is one of those other particular challenges, and this falling customer satisfaction, which we'll come back to in terms of looking at the UK CSI. But it's not all bad, all right? And I had the privilege this morning of being up very early on Wake Up to Money, and they were talking a lot about the economy. And in the UK, if you think about it, 80% of our GDP is services generated. That's a huge figure. Over 60% of our workforce work in some form of customer-related role. So, I think this is a really great opportunity for the UK to be great and to really drive the service agenda. And service doesn't just mean people. Service for me is about the solution we provide to the customer. So that integration between brilliant tech and brilliant people is the sweet spot that we're trying to, I would argue, drive to. You mentioned about why it is so important. I've spent my life at the Institute trying to demonstrate that link between customer satisfaction and return on investment. And this slide, for me, is if you don't take anything else out of the room, do take this with you. Because we first did this work back in 2017 and we reran it in 2023, looking at that link, that financial link between great customer satisfaction. Two really important things with this slide. It's not okay to be okay for a short period. Great customer satisfaction, if you get above average in your sector over a 5 to 8 year period, you'll get 10 percentage points higher levels of profitability, EBITDA, 7% plus levels of revenue, and you'll get twice the level of productivity. So, for me, it's not pink and fluffy, this subject. It's not about being nice to the customer. It's an economic driver for any business. And I think it is so critical in terms of really, driving that forward. So that for me is really important. Now, you mentioned the UK CSI. Mm-hmm. So we've been doing this since 2009. It has over 60,000 responses. It covers 13 different industry sectors. And as you can see on the graph behind me, it's a bit of a sad environment that we are in. And we've seen a significant fall in customer satisfaction since COVID. Saw a little bit of a spike up during COVID because as organisations we reached out more. But since where we are at the moment, we're seeing that decline. And I'm not seeing a lot, if I was honest, to arrest that decline. So that's a really big issue for me about what we do about that. And more importantly, the cost of that. So there's a big area around, we're spending nearly 3 days a month rectifying issues and problems that we have created as organisations. And that's a whopping £7 billion the UK nation is wasting. So there, for me, there's an opportunity cost too, because I don't know you, but I'd much rather be focusing on new and exciting things, even if the robotics terrify the hell out of us. That's some real opportunity going forward. So we need to arrest that particular issue. And some of that is because of where we are globally. Some of that is because of supply chain issues. Some of that is about quality. But some of that is actually in our gift. And I get asked a lot about, well, why are we seeing that decline? And I think there are two major issues. We haven't got enough people of the right skills and capabilities. And secondly, often the technology has overpromised, and I'm scared to say this to this audience, but overpromised and maybe underdelivered. Now, that doesn't mean to say that we will not get there. And the best approach for me is definitely a blended approach. So really understanding that customer and which parts of that customer journey are very ably done through technology. And we want that. We absolutely want that and need that.
And the point around the role of the customer service agent has just evolved beyond all recognition
Totally.
now. Particularly if we move to a self-serve model, then agents need to be technically very capable in a way that they haven't been before.
Completely. So the skill sets that we're asking our customer service operatives to now live are highly technical, very involved in data, because if we don't get the data right, our ability to navigate data to be able to get the right solution, but also high empathy, high connection, that real sense of being connected to the brand. So we're asking a lot of our customer service professionals, but I also think that makes it a much more exciting job. They're not processors.
Yeah.
That opportunity to really drive a much better service outcome.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jo. And what about automation and AI? How are customers feeling about it? Are they receptive to it?
So, as you can see here, I think the absolute truth is that if the experience is good, around about 35% of people will love it. If the experience is bad, then we are very easily upset by that. And at the moment, particularly around the chatbot, about 50% of that, people still feel that they need to talk to a human being after they've had that experience. And that's a great shame, because I think that's a missed opportunity. Now, that will get better as the data gets better and we get more advanced in how we do that. But we don't want to be in this situation where it's people versus tech. What we want to be in is in a situation where it's a blended approach. And that, for me, is going to require movements on both sides. So back to this point about integration, do we really understand what's going on with the customer? Are we really listening to our customer service professionals? But are we building the right customer journey that actually, and understanding, so we're not in a doom loop, as we call it, understanding when those particular challenges are.
And that stuff takes a lot of effort, right? It's a huge amount of work to get your data in the right place and to map your journeys and understand what the customer is at each point on that, and when's the right time to plug in tech and when's the right time for the human connection. Yeah, it's hugely complicated. I think, Jo, thank you. I think now is a good time to plug in you, Harriet.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, Harriet, you came to us a couple of years ago as part of an acquisition, and you brought with you the Smart Agent Contact Centre product, which is underpinned by Amazon Connect. So you also brought some customers with you, and you were a customer success manager, so you had helped those customers on the journey that Jo was just articulating around sort of AI and automation and digitising the customer contact strategy. Can you give us some examples of how you've already helped some Gamma customers through that journey?
Yes, absolutely. I think last year at GX was a real tipping point for ChatGPT. So we've been balancing a lot of those conversations that have since trickled in from the sort of technology estate that we've already got, and how can we sort of innovate with that next phase. So I think we've been really trying to kind of balance that blend of what is our customer strategy, how are we going to protect that, how are we going to enhance that, and how are we also going to sort of support the business and the advisors with that as well. So one of the topics, again, that came up from GX last year was that we are incredibly overloaded with tools, which is not a new conversation for any of us, and that's something that comes up almost daily with conversations with my customers, and I think probably everyone in the room that is not sat on a contact centre floor can also say that they're probably overloaded with a lot of tools. So there's a lot of switching between screens, trying to navigate what the best approach is, and trying to sort of desaturate that environment so that we can again offer that really succinct strategy. When it comes to advisors, we're really looking to help support their interaction with our customers so that they can deliver the best experience of our brand as well. So we're really trusting in our advisors in how to get the best across to the customer. I have a different blend of customers, so different industries. So sometimes I say customer and it's sometimes a service. But yeah, ultimately it's the end user of how we're getting in touch with the people that know our brand. So one of the, sorry, hang on, that's the right slide, yeah. One of the use cases that I think Chris mentioned earlier on was large language models. So in a way to reduce the cognitive load of our advisors, what we're able to do is ingest all of the information that we get from an IVR intent and display that to the advisor so that they've got a little bit of an idea or an evaluation or a bit of a jumping off point of how they can actually help that customer before they even connect to the call. And yeah, probably a bit of an emotional subject, but if you have ever needed to close an account for utilities or bank in terms of a bereavement, we're seeing a really strong use case here where we're able to take away that cognitive load of the advisor, actually offer them the information and the step-by-step process so that they're able to really lead that call with empathy and skill and really sit with that customer in that moment, because I think yeah, that's probably one call that we never want to remember for any reason. You know, the smoother it can run, the better. And thinking about that from an advisor perspective, to sort of leave their day having made, you know, a difference to that person in that moment, without taking that with them, their well-being, is absolutely enormous. So for me, looking after the advisor is looking after the customer.
I think it's a really good way to kind of dip your toe
Yeah,
into AI and
yeah.
automation as well, isn't it? Just sort of starting to surface really useful information to the agents internally before you sort of open Pandora's box on the customer community,
Yeah.
While you're getting your data sort of in good shape and everything. And
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time on the tools doing, you know, incidents and order updates and general customer service queries. So to have that information at your fingertips would just be hugely powerful. And as a customer, what an amazing experience for that agent to know about you and the things, the products you've got and the challenges you've got before they've even said hello. So yeah, I can see how that would be really, really useful.
Yeah.
Harriet, I think, could you just summarise for us what, if anybody, I think probably most people in the room are already well on their journeys and thinking about these sorts of things anyway, but with the benefit of your experience with how you've worked with customers already, what are the main recommendations you would make for people in the room around how to approach this journey?
So we are really following a human-in-the-loop methodology when it comes to AI. So we're not unleashing any chatbots or anything to any customers at all. We're not trusting that with our brand just yet. We need to get the tools and the systems sort of aligned before we can do that. So really keeping that human in the loop and letting it be a sort of support or helping hand is really the kind of strategy, and just ensuring that, again, we're asking, why are we using it? Is it the right time? Is it the right tool? And making sure, again, it protects and strengthens our customer strategy. So yeah, that's how we're going with it at the moment.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We're getting towards the end of our slot now. So Joe, I wanted to come back to you to wrap up, if that's okay. So we heard about the UK CSI, we heard about the general sentiment out there and the state of the service nation as it stands today. We've heard about the importance of trust in relationships. We've heard about the importance of customer satisfaction as a really key ingredient to increasing business productivity and business performance. So with all that in mind, what are the main takeaways for people in the room? What are the things that they can do based on the outputs of that report to really supercharge their offering?
So I think there's a couple of things. You know, as I said, really understanding the complexity of that journey, that customer journey. Really thinking hard about your data. Probably the biggest thing for me is about how we're using that data to make sure that it is, and asking the right questions. Often we don't interrogate that sufficiently well, and we assume a lot. So when I think working in a much more integrated way, so you're bringing the outside in, I think is clearly, I mean, it's an obvious point, but I don't think it happens all that well. And I think too, designing the end-to-end experience. I mean, Harriet, you were talking about, you know, if I'm thinking about being in a contact centre, I take my hat off to any of the agents. How they navigate the environment and the world that they're having to navigate at a time when consumers are much more challenging than they have ever been, and they're very frustrated. So, and sometimes they've been waiting a long time, you know, to get that response. So being able to make sure that that agent has the right information, the right data at their finger points to be able to, rather than worrying about getting the information, to focus on that customer, I think is an absolute critical part of this. I also think that, you know, this might sound slightly different to the rest of the audience here, but we're seeing a massive rise in activism in terms of consumer activism. So consumers are not quiet anymore. So this thing about reputation and risk, and it kind of relates a little bit to the cyber security conversation, you know, previously, it's a really big issue. And, you know, lots of the chief execs that I'm talking to at the moment are very concerned about how they protect their brand, how they are making sure that we're really understanding that customer journey and how we can respond to it. Not just from a crisis management point of view, but trying to do the right thing. So being authentic, being, you know, the experience matching what you would expect it to be. All those things in the UK CSI. And but interestingly, it's the softer elements of the UK CSI that are the things that drive the higher levels of satisfaction. I kind of expect you to do what you say that you're going to do. I kind of expect that delivery of that product or that service on that time. How you do it, whether you connect with me, whether you make me feel special, whether you're doing that ethically, will determine what I write about your brand on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the younger generations are even more cognizant of that, aren't they? Of the, you know, the social and sustainability policies that a company might put, how they treat their employees, and all that sort of stuff is becoming really important.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Jo. I will summarise, if I may. Thank you both so much for coming in and talking to us today. So to recap then the main points of the day and takeaways for us from this session, we've looked at customer service and how it is an organisational risk or an organisational asset, depending on how well you do it. And for that reason, it's starting to become more prominent in the boardroom. I think it's fair to say. We've looked at trust, the importance of trust, how to foster trust within your organisations, and how that's a soft process and something that you can't just switch on overnight. It comes from culture, it comes from your DNA, and it has to come from the top, and everybody has to walk the walk. Everybody will say they do this stuff well. It's how you act and how you behave when those moments present themselves to you, and that has to come from your C-suite and all the management levels in between, and the guy that picks up the phone on the support desk. It has to be endemic, and that is not easy to do. That is cultural, systemic change. We talked about how trust drives customer satisfaction scores, and we talked about how customer satisfaction in turn drives productivity and drives the performance of your business, and for those of you that are in it for profit, drives your profitability as well. We've spoken about how sadly CSAT is at a 10-year, I think, low, but how actually that presents an opportunity for customers that are invested in improving that, and it's a real opportunity to start pulling away from the pack and differentiating on service if you choose to do so. We've talked about AI and automation, and Harriet shared the benefit of her experience with us on there. So undoubtedly massively useful tools for us in elevating our customer experience and our customer service offering, but the need to tread with caution and not to do too much too fast, and perhaps test this with your own staff and things before you start unleashing it on the world. And finally, do the right thing, I think. Just behave with integrity at all levels, work on that culture, and everything else will come. So I'll leave it there. Thank you so much both for joining us today. We're going to go into a quick break now. I think we've got a 30-minute break. So the Institute of Customer Service do have a stand in the exhibition zone upstairs. If you're not a member, if you're not familiar with their work, please go and speak to them. It's honestly one of the best partnerships. They're not for profit. But you get a huge amount of value out of the partnership. So please do go and speak to them. They'll be pleased to show you what they do. Smart Agent are up there as well as Cisco and Microsoft and a host of others. So please do go and talk to them. Your Gamma host will be very happy to make the introductions for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.